is update for July 16, 2022, day 143 of the war, end of the date update. As always, we're going to start with general and strategic information, and then we're going to switch to the walk through the front line. It won't be much of the general information as it's weekend, it's relatively quiet. However, a few topics. First, focusing on Ukraine. If you remember, a few days ago, we mentioned about a Ukrainian company called Naftogaz that's essentially is monopolist in distributing natural gas in Ukraine. Effectively, it replaces the natural gas market in Ukraine. It's state-run, state-owned, source of tremendous corruption since its creation. I think it was around 2000. It was intentionally created just to create this corrupt income for their top officials in Ukraine. So this company borrowed a significant amount of money internationally through the bonds, corporate bonds, and now it's asking its creditors to effectively delay coupon payments or interest payments for 2 years, and their creditors refuse that, asking to pay whatever is due on the due dates. This highlights the situation where we believe that Ukrainian government entities and Ukrainian government will eventually need to default on their debts, because it doesn't look that creditors are willing to negotiate restructuring. So it may lead to a hardcore default. And just to explain what's going on with Ukrainian reserves of foreign currency, it's essentially like a savings account of the government. So the national bank, which holds this holder of this purse of the savings, they are spending about $900 million to support per week to support Ukrainian currency hryvnia, and that's really large number. Prior to the war, they were actually usually buying for FX reserves. Sometimes they were sort of selling right like a couple weeks before the war, when it was becoming very clear to large businesses in Ukraine that the war is imminent. So, but before that, they were usually a buyer of FX reserve. Now, and we mentioned that reserves are dwindling pretty fast. So this really means that Ukrainian savings account is going down by about $4 billion US dollars per month. At that rate, it actually looks like it's much faster rate that we anticipated. So the situation of default is probably looming sometime in September or October of this year. Now let's switch to Russian's sort of political top, or military actually top. So Russian Minister of Defense Shoigu urged Russian troops in Ukraine to resume attacks and to push Ukrainian troops as far as possible so that they don't attack A, Russian territory, B, captured territories, specifically this Luhansk region and Donetsk region, and specifically city of Donetsk. So that's and we have not seen, he urged, but if you look at what's going on the battlefield, there's no essential change so far. The only news that we see is that 11th Airborne Brigade, if you can see here, 11th and then 5th Tank Brigade, they are either just returned to the front line in Ukraine, or they about to return. So effectively they were replenished and now they are coming fresh. And this is from Kyiv West attack group. We mentioned before that these two units were had suffered severe casualties relative to other units, and also including 31st Airborne Brigade, but we're not seeing that brigade yet. but the 2 units out of those that were severely sort of damaged, they are coming back on the battlefield. So that really tells us that regrouping and sort of refreshing, replenishing Russian troops is coming to probably to the end, and that's why the Minister of Defense Shoigu is urging Russian troops to renew its attacks and everything. On Ukrainian military side, there is a clarification from Ukrainian top in terms of their plans to use HIMARS rocket systems. They explicitly said that they're gonna use it against any targets in Crimea, including Crimea Bridge. So that's on the table. The Russian territory is off the table, essentially. In terms of actual use of HIMARS system, we see that the use A went down significantly, and B, there were no new essential targets hit in the past couple of days. So that war against the ammunition depots seems to be petering out, at least for now. Remains to be seen what long-term effect it will have. As we mentioned before, we're somewhat skeptical about the long-term effect of these attacks. Now let's jump to actually walk through the front line, as we always do, starting from the very north and then going down in a clockwise fashion. So first of all, along the state border, as always, there is exchange of artillery fire, mortar fire, sometimes rockets, sometimes even attack helicopters. So, everything goes, as they say. But the intensity doesn't go up. It stays somewhat elevated, but it remains sort of stable there. Now let's move to the situation east of Kharkiv. Things here are totally on pause. No essential action, exchanges of artillery fire, even that doesn't seem to be extremely active. Now let's move down south. Let's look what's going on Izyum bridgehead. Here everything is actually quiet, which is actually very surprisingly, because this place is always, there's something going on here. Today was a call it quiet day here. Now let's move to North Donbass front line. Let's see what's going on there. Here there were some attacks by Russian troops. One was towards village Grigoriivka that's still being held by Ukrainian troops, it's here. You sort of don't see it because it's tiny. The other location where the Russian troops attacked was towards Ivano-Darivka, this village, which has seen quite many Russian attacks so far. And then we'll move a little bit more south. So the other areas of attacks were again the typical areas towards this village Vrshina, then towards this power plant here, and then also towards village Samigiria over here, and also call it sort of town, sort of kind of like a crossover between town and the village. It's called Novolohansky. So this is obviously here done by Wagner mercenaries. Here it looks like it's the troops from 1st Army Corps. They are back here and attacking. Now let's move south. Donetsk. Here situation more or less stable and positional. The only exception is Russian attacks to the north of Avdiyivka, with the idea of creating sort of a credible threat for Ukrainian troops of encirclement and forced withdrawal from the town of Avdiyivka. Now let's move. Let's actually move west. Let's look what's going on Zaporizhia front line. Here situation is stable, as it has been for past two months or so more. Just exchange of artillery fire, reconnaissance action, probing action, nothing really changing here. Now let's look at what's going on at Kherson bridgehead. Things here is exactly similar to what's going on Zaporizhia front line, what's going on near Kharkiv. Everything is positional, just exchange of artillery fire as always. As a heads up, I am working on their first couple days of war, what happened here in Ukraine, in southern Ukraine, specifically Kherson, Zaporizhia, and Mariupol, because it's also there are a lot of speculation going on inside of the country, how this happened, that Russian troops managed to capture these bridges, and generally how this happened, that they were so sort of successful and captured all of this territory and essentially encircled Ukrainian troops in Mariupol. So we'll look into that. I'm probably will take 2-3 more days to finish it, maybe more, maybe 4, but definitely this coming week I will release that video. Thanks for watching, and until tomorrow. Thanks. Bye bye.